The elevator doors opened to the top floor of Hart Enterprises, and Sophie Chin stepped out on legs that threatened to betray her. Her new heels clicked against marble floors, each step echoing her racing heartbeat. The nameplate on her fake ID read, Sophie Williams. Her mother's maiden name, the only armor she had. Damien Hart's office loomed at the end of the hall, all glass walls and sharp angles. Just like the man himself. She'd studied his face for months, memorized every interview, every cold smile that never reached those storm-gray eyes. This was the man who'd sworn to destroy her father's pharmaceutical company, to erase the Chen family legacy from existence. And she'd just been hired as his personal secretary. Her phone buzzed. A text from her father. Any news on the takeover plans? She silenced it quickly. Guilt twisted in her stomach, but she pushed it down. This was the only way to save her family. Get close to Damien, discover his strategy, feed information back to her father. Simple corporate espionage. In and out in 3 months. The office door swung open. Damien Hart stood there, 6 feet of controlled power in a tailored suit, his expression carved from ice. His eyes swept over her, analytical and distant, like she was another acquisition to evaluate. Miss Williams. You're early. I believe in punctuality, Mr. Hart. His lips curved slightly. Not quite a smile. More like a predator acknowledging interesting prey. Good. Because I don't tolerate mistakes. Or lies. Sophie's blood turned cold, but she held his gaze. Then we'll get along perfectly. I have nothing to hide. The biggest lie she'd ever told. 3 weeks in, and Sophie was drowning in Damien Hart. Not metaphorically. Literally drowning in his presence, his demands, his absolute expectation of perfection. He worked 18-hour days and expected her to match him, stride for stride. Coffee at 6 a.m. Meetings until midnight. Weekends didn't exist in his vocabulary. But neither did small talk. Personal questions. Anything remotely human. Until tonight. 2 a.m. in his office, city lights painting shadows across his desk. She'd stayed late to crack his encrypted files, the ones hiding his revenge blueprint against her father. Her fingers flew across the keyboard while he was supposedly in the conference room. Looking for something specific? Sophie's heart stopped. She spun around. Damien leaned against the doorframe, jacket discarded, tie loosened, exhaustion written in the lines around his eyes. But those eyes were sharp. Missing nothing. I was organizing your acquisition files. The Chen Pharmaceuticals folder seemed incomplete. Did it? He moved closer and Sophie's back pressed against his desk. He reached past her, his arm brushing hers, and closed the laptop with one finger. The space between them felt electric and dangerous. That folder is incomplete because there's nothing left to acquire. Chen is finished. I've already won. Why? The question escaped before she could stop it. Why destroy them? Something flickered in his expression. Pain maybe. Or rage. Because 15 years ago, Richard Chen stole everything from my family. My father's research. His reputation. His will to live. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. Chen built an empire on my father's genius, then watched him die in poverty. Sophie's world tilted. That wasn't true. It couldn't be. Her father was brilliant, ethical, kind. But Damien's eyes held nothing but absolute conviction. And suddenly she didn't know which man was lying. The file appeared on her desk 3 days later. Unmarked manila folder, contents that made Sophie's hands shake as she read. Patents filed by Jonathan Hart, Damien's father, dated 3 months before her father's breakthrough drug launched. Financial records showing payments from Chen Pharmaceuticals to offshore accounts. And photos. Her father and Jonathan Hart, once partners, smiling together before everything burned. She found Damien on the rooftop garden, his private sanctuary where he thought no one followed. Rain misted the air and he stood at the edge looking down at the city he'd conquered. You left this for me. She held up the folder. He didn't turn. I wanted you to understand. Understand what? That my father is a thief. That I'm not the villain you think I am. He finally faced her, and the rawness in his expression stole her breath. I've watched you, Sophie. The way you work. Your integrity. You remind me of my father before Chen destroyed him. You don't know anything about me. Don't I? He stepped closer, rain beginning to fall harder now. You stay late to find evidence against me. You think I don't notice? You're loyal to someone. Desperately loyal. And it's killing you to work for the enemy. Tears mixed with rain on Sophie's cheeks. He's my father. The words hung between them. Damien's eyes widened, then narrowed, emotions cascading across his face too fast to name. Betrayal, understanding, and something that looked dangerously like respect. Sophie Chen. He said her real name like a revelation. You've been spying on me this whole time. And you've been planning to destroy everything I love. They stared at each other through the rain, two people on opposite sides of a war neither of them chose. But something else crackled in the air between them now. Something neither wanted to name. Recognition. Connection. The terrible, impossible pull of two people who should be enemies but felt like mirrors. Damien didn't fire her. Sophie didn't quit. Instead, they made a deal over Chinese takeout at 3 a.m. in his office, rain still streaking the windows. An impossible, dangerous deal. 2 weeks, Damien said, pushing a container of lo mein toward her. You get 2 weeks to prove your father is innocent. Show me evidence that contradicts what I have. And if I can't? Then you step aside and let me finish what I started. His eyes were hard. But you do it honestly. No more lies between us. Sophie's chest tightened. And if I prove you wrong? Then I'll help you find out who really destroyed my father. He leaned back, studying her. Because if it wasn't Richard Chin, someone went to great lengths to make it look like him. And I want to know why. They worked through the night, papers spread across every surface, building parallel timelines. Sophie called in sick to her father for the first time in her life. Damien canceled a week of meetings. They barely slept, surviving on coffee and the desperate need for truth. On day 4, Sophie found it. A third name in the financial records, buried so deep she'd almost missed it. Marcus Webb, her father's former business partner. The man who'd left Chen Pharmaceuticals 15 years ago to start his own company. He's your current competitor, Sophie breathed. Webb Biotech. Damien's face went pale. He's on my board of directors. I brought him in last year. Their eyes met across the desk. Understanding dawned cold and terrible. They'd both been played. Marcus Webb had destroyed Jonathan Hart, framed Richard Chin, and positioned himself to profit from both men's suffering. And now he was inside Damien's company, waiting to strike again. We have to tell my father, Sophie said. Not yet. Damien's hand covered hers on the desk. First we take Webb down. Together. The gala was Marcus Webb's idea. A charity event celebrating Hart Enterprises' latest acquisition, with Damien as the guest of honor and Webb pulling strings from the shadows. Sophie wore a dress Damien had sent to her apartment. Midnight blue silk that made her feel dangerous and beautiful and completely out of her depth. You look terrified, Damien murmured as they entered the ballroom, his hand at the small of her back sending electricity up her spine. I'm about to help expose a man who's ruined lives. Including my father's. Including yours. Then let's make him pay. His fingers tightened on her waist. Stay close to me. Webb doesn't know you're Richard Chen's daughter. That's our advantage. The plan was simple. Sophie would charm Webb, get him talking while Damien's security team recorded everything. They'd wired her dress, her clutch, even her earrings. She was walking evidence. But nothing about that night went according to plan. Webb cornered her by the champagne fountain, his smile predatory. Your Heart's new secretary. Sophie Williams, isn't it? That's right. Funny. You look so much like someone I used to know. Richard Chen's late wife. His eyes glittered with malice. Tell me, does Damien know he's been sleeping with the enemy's daughter? Sophie's blood ran cold. He knew. He'd always known. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Webb leaned closer, voice dropping to a whisper meant only for her microphone. I've been waiting for this moment. Watching Damien Hart fall for the one woman guaranteed to destroy him. Just poetic, really. Just like I destroyed his father by making him trust me. You're confessing. I'm gloating. There's a difference. He smiled. By tomorrow, everyone will know Damien's secretary is a Chen. His board will force him out for the conflict of interest. Hart Enterprises will crumble. And I'll buy the pieces. Across the room, Damien was already moving, security in tow. But Webb saw him coming. His hand clamped around Sophie's wrist, hard enough to bruise. Tell Damien I win. Again. The scandal hit before sunrise. Webb leaked everything. Photos of Sophie and Damien working late, emails between them, her real identity. The headline screamed betrayal. Billionaire's secretary revealed as enemy's daughter. Hart's judgment compromised by office romance. Chin spy infiltrates Hart Enterprises. Sophie's phone exploded with calls. Her father. Her friends. Reporters. She ignored them all, sitting in her apartment as the world burned down around her. until Damien's name flashed on her screen. "Don't come to the office," he said without preamble. "It's a mob scene." "I'm so sorry. I never meant." "I know." His voice was raw. "But it doesn't matter. The board is calling for my resignation. My investors are pulling out. Everything I built is collapsing because I trusted the wrong person." The words cut deeper than any blade. "I wasn't the wrong person. Weren't you?" He laughed bitterly. "You lied about who you were from day one. How is that different from what Webb did to my father?" "Because I fell in love with you." The confession ripped out of her, desperate and true. "I came here for revenge, yes. But somewhere between the late nights and the coffee runs and watching you carry the weight of the world on your shoulders, I stopped caring about sides. I just cared about you." Silence stretched across the line. When Damien spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. "I love you too. That's what makes this so much worse. Because love isn't enough when the cost is everything else." The line went dead. Sophie sat in the dark, her phone clutched to her chest, and finally let herself shatter. She'd lost him. Lost everything. And the worst part was understanding exactly why. But as the sun rose on her ruined life, something crystallized in her mind. Webb had won because they'd fought him separately. Hidden truths. Protected pride. Feared vulnerability. Maybe it was time to try something different. Maybe it was time to burn it all down and rebuild from the ashes. Together. Sophie walked into Hart Enterprises at noon the next day, and the lobby fell silent. Whispers followed her to the elevator, phones raised to capture the scandal. She didn't care. She dressed in her best armor, a red suit that screamed confidence she didn't feel, and carried a briefcase full of ammunition. Damien's office was empty. His assistant looked uncomfortable. "He's in the emergency board meeting. You really shouldn't be here." "Perfect. That's exactly where I need to be." She pushed open the conference room doors before anyone could stop her. 15 board members turned to stare. At the head of the table, Damien's face went white. Marcus Webb smiled from his seat, victory written in every line of his expression. "Miss Chin," Webb said smoothly, "I don't believe you were invited." "I wasn't. But I have something you all need to hear." Sophie connected her laptop to the projector with shaking hands. "I've spent the last 24 hours digging into Hart Enterprises' finances. Specifically, the offshore accounts that were used to steal from Jonathan Hart 15 years ago." The screen lit up with records, spreadsheets, transaction histories. The board members leaned forward, squinting. These accounts were opened by Marcus Webb. The same Marcus Webb who is currently on your board, who has spent 15 years positioning himself to destroy this company from the inside. She clicked to the next slide. Photos of Webb meeting with Hart's competitors. "He's been selling your secrets. Sabotaging your deals. All while pretending to be your ally." Webb's smile never wavered. "These are fabrications. Desperate lies from a woman trying to save her lover's reputation." "Are they?" Sophie pulled out the final piece. A USB drive, small and silver. "This is a recording from last night's gala. Your confession, Mr. Webb. Every word. You told me you destroyed Jonathan Hart, framed my father, and planned to destroy Damien the same way." She looked at Damien. "You wanted truth. Here it is. All of it." The room erupted. But Sophie only saw Damien's face, shock giving way to something that looked like hope. The lawsuit took 6 months to build. Sophie and Damien worked side by side, rebuilding trust one honest conversation at a time. Her father joined them, Richard Chin, who'd spent 15 years believing he was broken, finally learning he'd been sabotaged. The courtroom was packed the day they testified. Sophie's hands trembled as she placed them on the Bible, swearing to tell the truth. The whole truth. Nothing but the truth. "Miss Chin," the prosecutor began, "you infiltrated Hart Enterprises under false pretenses. Why should we believe anything you say now?" Sophie looked at the jury. At Damien sitting in the front row, his eyes never leaving her face. "Because I spent my entire life believing in loyalty to family above all else. And I was wrong. Loyalty without truth is just complicity in lies." Her voice strengthened. "I lied to protect my father from something he didn't do. But I'm done lying. Marcus Webb destroyed 2 families because of greed. And he needs to answer for that." The evidence spoke for itself. The recordings. The financial trails. Testimony from Jonathan Hart's former colleagues who'd been too afraid to speak up before. And finally, Richard Chin himself, admitting he'd suspected something was wrong 15 years ago but had been too proud to question his success. "I built my company on foundations I didn't examine closely enough," her father said, his voice breaking. "I thought I'd earned everything. but parts of it were stolen. And I've spent 15 years benefiting from another man's genius while his son suffered. I can't undo that. But I can make it right. The verdict came swiftly. Marcus Webb was sentenced to 15 years for fraud, theft, and conspiracy. His assets were seized, divided between the Hart and Chin families as restitution. Justice, cold and final, served at last. But as Sophie walked out of the courthouse, Damien's hand finding hers in the crowd, she realized the real verdict was still pending. The one that mattered most. Could they build something real from the wreckage of revenge? Damien's penthouse looked different now. Warmer. The walls held photos, his father's old research, Sophie's artwork, memories of the months they'd spent fighting side by side. They'd been careful since the trial ended. Dating publicly. Taking it slow. Rebuilding what lies had broken. But tonight, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, Sophie felt the weight of an impossible decision pressing down on her lungs. My father wants to merge the companies, she said quietly. Chin and Hart Pharmaceuticals. A partnership to honor both our fathers' legacies. Damien's reflection appeared in the glass beside her. What do you want? I want to stop being Richard Chen's daughter or Jonathan Hart's justice. I want to just be me. And who is that? Sophie turned to face him. I don't know yet. I spent so long being who my father needed me to be, then who you needed me to be. I need time to figure out who I am when I'm not fighting someone else's war. Pain flashed across Damien's face, but he nodded. How much time? 6 months. Maybe a year. I've been offered a position in Doctors Without Borders. Medical research in places that need it more than corporate boardrooms. She touched his face, memorizing every angle. I need to do something that's mine. Not legacy. Not revenge. Just good. And us. I love you. The words came easily now without fear. But I also know I can't build a life with you until I know who I am without you. Does that make sense? Damien pulled her close, his forehead resting against hers. It makes perfect sense. And I'll wait. However long it takes. What if I come back different? Then I'll fall in love with who you've become. He kissed her softly. But Sophie? You should know, I'm not waiting passively. I've got my own work to do. Therapy. Actually dealing with my father's death instead of channeling it into revenge. Becoming someone worthy of you when you return. They held each other as the sun set over the city, two people brave enough to choose growth over comfort, truth over convenience. It wasn't the ending Sophie had imagined, but it felt real. Honest. Right. 1 year, she whispered. And then we see if we still fit. We'll fit, Damien promised. Just better. 14 months later, Sophie Chin stepped off a plane at JFK with sun-darkened skin, new scars on her hands from fieldwork, and stories etched into every line of her face. She delivered medicine to war zones, taught farming communities about sustainable agriculture, and learned 17 ways to say hope in languages she'd never known existed. And she'd thought about Damien Hart every single day. Her phone had 37 missed calls. She turned it off the moment she landed, needing 1 more hour of being just Sophie before stepping back into everything else. But as the taxi pulled up to Hart Enterprises, force of habit bringing her here first, her heart climbed into her throat. The building was different. The old corporate logo was gone, replaced by something new. Hartchin Foundation, Research for Tomorrow. Sophie's hands shook as she paid the driver. The lobby had changed too. Where there'd been marble and steel, now there were plants, natural light, photos of smiling researchers in labs. A directory listed departments. Orphan Drug Research, Accessible Medicine Initiative, Jonathan Hart Memorial Wing. Can I help you? Sophie turned. A young receptionist smiled at her, kind and professional. I'm looking for Damien Hart. Oh, he's in the community lab today. 3rd floor, East Wing. Just take the elevator. The receptionist paused, eyes widening. Wait, are you Sophie Chin? Sophie's chest tightened. Yes. Oh my God. He's going to lose his mind. He talks about you constantly. When Sophie gets back, this and Sophie would love this that. We've all been waiting to meet you. She grabbed the phone. Don't move. I'm calling him right now. Wait, I wanted to. But the elevator doors opened and Damien Hart stepped out, breathless and disheveled in jeans and a t-shirt she'd never seen him wear before. His hair was longer. His face softer. His eyes, God, his eyes, lit up like she'd brought the sun back with her. You're early, he breathed. You rebranded the company. You're wearing boots covered in red dirt and you've never looked more beautiful. They stood there, suspended in the moment before everything changed. A year apart. A lifetime of growth between them. And suddenly Sophie wasn't scared anymore. She crossed the lobby in 6 strides and kissed him, pouring 14 months of longing into it. He caught her, lifting her off her feet, laughing against her mouth. "I found myself," she whispered when they broke apart. "Turns out I'm someone who saves lives, argues with bureaucrats and really, really loves you." "I found myself too," Damien said, setting her down but keeping her close. "Turns out I'm someone who builds legacies that matter, goes to therapy twice a week and really, really loves you back." The foundation. Your father and I are co-chairs. We're funding research for diseases pharmaceutical companies ignore because they're not profitable. It's messy and beautiful and everything our fathers should have built together. He tucked her hair behind her ear. "I couldn't wait for you to see it." Sophie looked around the lobby, at the people working with purpose, at the mission statement etched into the wall. Making medicine for people, not profit. Her father's old dream, merged with Jonathan Hart's brilliance, freed from Marcus Webb's corruption. "We did it," she said. "We took something broken and made it beautiful." "We did." Damien took her hand. "So, Sophie Chin, who are you now when you're not fighting someone else's war?" She smiled, finally knowing the answer. "I'm someone who fights her own wars, chooses her own battles, loves who she wants." She squeezed his hand. "I'm someone who's finally home." The elevator doors closed around them, rising toward the future they'd earned. Not revenge. Not legacy. Just 2 people who'd learned that the best way to honor the past was to build a better future. Together. Finally. Home. If this story of revenge, redemption, and real love touched your heart, hit that like button and subscribe for more emotional romance stories. Drop a comment. Would you have gone undercover to save your family? What would you have done differently? Let me know. See you in the next story.